Thanks, Fred and the Heavy Chef team for having me speak tonight. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Sweepsouth, my startup, and our journey. I don't have any kind of big, exciting, crazy insights. It's just really about our journey as we've started our startup 3 years ago and some of the challenges and successes that we've had. And hopefully along the way, and as I talk about that journey, you'll find things that are inspiring or insightful to you. And so what is Sweepsouth? Sweepsouth is a social utility and an online platform that allows homeowners who are looking for home cleaning services and looking for someone to clean their home to connect to domestic workers who are experienced and vetted and looking for work to connect the two sides together. It's the first of its kind, not just in South Africa, but also on the continent. And through technology, we're making the process of connecting to a cleaner, booking, managing, and paying for home cleaning services extremely convenient. And we provide a couple of guarantees, so they're things like trusted cleaners, we do all the vetting for you. We provide convenience through technology. We've been able to take a process, getting a domestic worker to come and help you clean your home, from taking hours or days or even weeks down to just a few minutes. And then also we provide a whole lot of guarantees that you wouldn't necessarily get if you were getting these services through other means. And so Sweepsouth is a marketplace. We deal with domestic workers on the one hand and clients on the other hand. And we're really passionate about offering value to both sides of the marketplace. So, and this is quite unique in South Africa. We're probably one of the first kind of South African-born marketplaces where we've had to really look at value that we add to both sides. So from the Sweepstar side, and Sweepstar is a term that we've coined ourselves to refer to domestic workers who work on our platform. And we've done that very consciously. So we use the term Sweepstar to move away from using language like maid and char, which we found is very loaded and often heavily loaded with negative connotations and a lot of historical connotations as well. And so Sweepstars on the one hand are our customers on the one hand of the marketplace. These people are the 1.2 million registered Sweepstars in South Africa alone, or domestic workers in South Africa alone. Very high levels of unemployment and underemployment, so lots of issues there. Often low job security, so people, you move house and what happens to your domestic worker. And then people are often exploited, so face a lot of exploit and abuse through the people that they're working with. So what Sweepsouth provides on that side is that we are we allow people differentiation, so we're putting people up onto our platform with a whole lot of factors that make them unique. So allow people to differentiate, allow people to market themselves through the platform, and then also through the benefit of working through Sweepsouth, they have protection from that exploitation and abuse which people had faced before. And then on the homeowner side, characteristics here are that people are increasingly busy, so have less time to try and find these services, less time to clean the home yourself or to try and find someone to clean your home for you. People have more disposable income. They are increasingly security conscious, but also increasingly socially conscious. So people want to know, when you have a domestic worker working at your house, how is this person getting treated? Are they being treated well? Are they being paid well? And it's against that backdrop that Sweepsouth is operating, where we're again providing convenience, very quick way of booking these services. We're providing vetting, so the security issues are being taken care of. And then we're also connecting the two sides to each other through technology. And so some numbers since launching Sweepsouth. We launched just over 3 years ago, and since launching, we've had 3,500 Sweepstars join our platform, 250,000 bookings on the platform. We've completed 1.5 million hours of cleaning, and we're operating in 4 South African cities. So the business has really grown since those initial stages. But the founding story for Sweepsouth and our story kind of comes off of the backdrop of my co-founder, who happens to be my husband, and there's probably a whole other talk that I can do around starting a business with your husband. But two of us working as in the corporate world, really feeling like corporate slaves, and not enjoying the work that we were doing, not feeling like we had enough opportunity to progress in our careers, and also feeling like, in terms of ourselves and the benefit that we could bring to the environment that we were in, the work we were doing wasn't allowing us those opportunities. And so this really came to a head in 2 very different ways for myself and my co-founder. For me, it was working as a management consultant. I was rated top among my peer group, and I was managing people who joined the company before myself. And when it came time to talk about promotion, my superior said, we'd really love to promote you, but actually there's a lot of politics there, and those guys who you're managing are going to be really angry, so we promise that we'll promote you next year. And that just was unacceptable to me. And so I decided that I probably wasn't going to stick around. And then for my co-founder, it was actually almost the reverse of that situation, where he was also working in corporate. He's a developer, and he was, working full days work, working side projects while he was at work. He was going to movies once a week at least during working hours. So really just feeling very bored and underutilized at work. And his boss called him into the office one day and said, Alen, I really need to talk to you about something. And he thought, oh my God, like the jig is up. They found out that I'm going to movies during work. And he sat down with his boss, and his boss said, Alen, you're doing such an amazing job. We want to put you on our corporate leadership program and make you, one of the leading managers of the company. And for him, that was just a sign that the effort that he was putting in and the way that his company was recognizing him, he was obviously not fully utilizing his talents. And so he decided to leave. And so we, knew that we weren't going to work corporate, but didn't really know what it is that we were going to do. And so we were living in Johannesburg at the time. And this was during 2013. During December of that year, we decided to go to Cape Town. We ran away to mom and dad who were living in Cape Town to go and stay with them in their house and try and work out what it was that we were going to do next with our lives. And so we went to Cape Town and went to the house and realized that the domestic worker who was working in the house and helping with cleaning there, in the same way as we wanted to go to Cape Town and have a great break over December, she was also going to want to have a break over the December period. And she was going to go to the Eastern Cape to go and spend time with her family. And so we had a 3-year-old daughter at the time who was changing clothes 5-6 times a day, had 5 different colored tutus that she wanted to wear in one day. And we had family members who wanted to take advantage of, family having a house in Cape Town during December, so they all descended on the house as well. And we faced the prospect of now spending this December, instead of thinking about what we wanted to do with our lives, cleaning up after the 3-year-old and the, so-and-so's auntie and whoever else. And so we didn't want to do that, obviously, and went about trying to find someone to help us and to replace this lady short term. And so we did what people did before Sweepsouth existed, which is to ask friends on social media if they knew anyone, if they could refer a domestic worker. We went on to newspaper and online classifieds to try and find these services or people who were listing their services. And we faced a couple of issues. So the first thing was that when people referred domestic workers on Facebook, we would contact the domestic worker they'd referred, and the lady would say, well, yeah, I work in Stellenbosch, you live in Rondebosch, I'm not going to come all that way to work for you. Or we'd speak to someone over the phone, and we'd find that our friend had referred them, but that person wasn't necessarily someone who was going to work for us. It's a very subjective industry, and they might have liked some things that we didn't like. And then also with the classifieds, the same thing. We'd call someone who'd listed themselves on the classifieds, and we'd phone them, and they'd listed 2-3 weeks ago, and by the time we phoned, they'd say, no, I'm actually working somewhere else, and I'm not available anymore. Also, classifieds aren't really vetted. So you'd phone someone, and a man would answer the phone. And there'd be a picture of a lady on the classified ad. And, the guy would sound really dodgy, and you'd get the no feeling, and that didn't feel very safe. And so eventually we went to these agencies that have existed in South Africa for decades and decades, and we contacted them, and we had a whole lot of email conversations and phone conversations, and we said that we needed someone to work for us short term. Could they help us out? And they put us into a room. We went, to their premises. They put us into a room with 2 plastic chairs, like the chairs that you guys are sitting on, and put a queue of people outside the door and said, they're the people that you're going to interview. You guys talk to these domestic workers. When you find someone, tell us, and we'll connect you to them. And we sat down and chatted to these ladies who were working with the agencies, and they talked about things like, well, firstly, they didn't really seem motivated to impress us or to work for us. And then they talked about things like being, really badly paid, facing abuse, exploitation from both their clients and from the agencies themselves, and just not really being in an industry that motivated them or that they wanted to work in. We later also found out that there are over 1.2 million registered domestic workers in South Africa. So this is a really big group of people. So just to give you context, that's 2% of South Africa's total population are domestic workers. And if you're looking at black women in South Africa, 8% of black women in South Africa are domestic workers. So it's a really big, relevant group of people who we were talking to. And bearing that in mind, we realized that there was probably an opportunity here to try and, firstly, fix the problems that we faced as homeowners who were looking for these services, but then also to try and fix the situation that domestic workers were facing through this solution that we were going to build. And so we had this situation that I call useful irritation, and I've kind of thought about this term as the motivation that I feel when I come across a situation that irritates me, and the motivation that I feel through that dissatisfaction to try and change whatever that scenario is. And so through this feeling of irritation about what we'd face and what we'd experience, we thought, you know what, let's build a solution around this. We were also lucky that amongst my co-founder, my husband, and myself, we happened to have the skills that would be needed to build a solution like this. So I had worked as a management consultant. I had skills around HR management and around supply chain and operations. He was a developer, so he could build a tech platform that would address this problem. And so we had a complementary set of skills to go about building the solution that we envisioned. And so we went about building an MVP, so a minimum viable product, a very, very basic version of technology that would solve these problems. Oh, Jesus.
Sweepsouth.
Fine, yeah, we use Sweepsouth. You got your voucher over there, use it wisely. So we went about, the first step that we took after that experience was to ask a couple of friends if they also felt like the industry was broken. So I think, and that's important when you're wanting to start something new. You know, you have your personal experience, but your personal experience isn't necessarily the experience that's shared by everyone else. And so we went to friends and tried to get some additional validation, and we sent out a Google form with questions, asked people whether they felt like the domestic work industry in South Africa needed fixing, and we got a resounding yes. Every single person who answered that survey amongst our group of friends said that they felt that there were issues in the industry and it needed to be fixed. And so that was a pretty good indicator that we were onto something. And so we spent the next couple of months building Sweepsouth, and we were careful not to over-engineer it. We wanted to just build a very basic concept that would test two things. The one thing was, would people be interested in using an online platform? At that point, it was a website to get domestic workers. And then the second thing would be, would people be willing to pay for something like this online? Would they be able to get over concerns around security and cards and online payments, etc.? And that's all we wanted to test. So this is our initial logo. The actual picture of the broom is clip art. We paid $0 for it, very low on design. But we were very, very resolute that we didn't want to over-engineer the solution. We wanted to build an MVP, listen to what people had to say as they were using the platform, and then take it from there. And so we went about building Sweepsouth, and we launched on the 1st of June 2014, roughly 6 months after we had the initial concept. And we thought that we'd have droves of people coming to use the platform. And so we launched, announced it on Facebook, and then crickets. It was absolute silence, no one cared. And we were quite surprised by this, obviously, because we'd had the feedback that people would want a service like this. And we had to go out and literally get our initial customers, like go out and, and grab people and ask them to use the platform. And so apart from myself, and that's me making Sweepsouth's first ever booking there back in 2014, but apart from myself, we had one customer, one additional customer in the first month after we launched, and it was our neighbor, who we would watch through the window because we were working from home, and we'd watch him leave his house, and when he left the house, we'd chase him and quickly try and get him before he reached the car, so we could harass him and try and guilt him into making a booking. And so those were our two initial customers with Sweepsouth. But what was encouraging was that we began to grow, and so although we had 2 customers in the first month, we'd have 3 or 4 the next month, and we were continuously growing and doubling, tripling, quadrupling our numbers to a point where we really felt like this idea was starting to take shape. And so a couple of months after we launched Sweepsouth, we were very emboldened by the fact that the business was growing. We had something like 10, 20 customers, and we thought we were really making it. And we were living in Joburg and started to think about how we were going to expand this business. very prematurely in hindsight. We started to think about how we were going to expand Sweepsouth into additional cities. And so I had this really great idea, that we were going to use a whole lot of different ways to grow, and we were going to try and launch in Cape Town, and we do it with, trying different experiments. And one of them was that I came across this tech conference called Simodisa Startup SA, that at the time was billed as like the biggest tech conference in South Africa. And this was at the end of 2014. And so this was one out of a couple of things that I thought we could do to try and launch. So I entered us into this competition, didn't tell my co-founder about it, and didn't really think much more of it. And then a couple of days before, and we were living in Joburg, this is in Cape Town, a couple of days before the actual conference was meant to happen, I got an email saying you guys are in the top 10 startups you're going to pitch at the conference, and you have to make your way to Cape Town. And I emailed them back quickly and said, you guys don't sponsor flights by any chance, do you? And they said, no, we don't. You've got to make a plan. And so I had to tell my co-founder that what little money we had left, we were going to use to buy flights to Cape Town to go and pitch at a conference instead of working on the business. And he really was not impressed by this at all. So I had to make it work and make sure that we were making good use of the funds and the money that we were using. And so we went to this conference and we pitched and really gave a strong pitch where we had these fantastic projections and we were going to grow 100 times in 1 year and whatever else. But we ended up winning that pitching competition. And then something else happened. That one of the judges who was judging the pitches was a guy who we'd admired in the tech scene for years and years. His name is Vinnie Lingham. He's one of the founding partners of Newtown Partners. His partner Lou is here. He was one of the judges of the pitching competition and came up to us afterwards and said, guys, I really loved your pitch. I would love to invest. How much do you guys need? And so I gave him a number, and he said to me, no, that's not what you need to raise. That is the valuation of your entire company. And so I learned a good lesson there, also around being realistic about what it is that you raise, and also not raising too much too soon. And so we got Vinny and Lou, who came on board as initial investors and really kind of changed the game around the business and how we grew the startup, and helped us to accelerate the growth and to avoid a lot of the pitfalls that startups often face, especially in the early stages. But those first kind of months after we got an investment weren't without challenges. And we faced things that all startups face, and some of those things were building a market. So as a startup that was the first of its kind in South Africa, we had to try and build and educate a market around what it is that we were. And that was expensive in some cases, because people didn't know that they could look online to find this thing called Sweepsouth to book domestic services. And so we had to put resources behind trying to educate people that we actually existed. We also faced a lot of concerns over card payments and connectivity, and there were big articles being published during that year about whether South Africa was going to have enough people who used credit cards or who had credit cards or who could connect to the internet to be able to sustain this kind of growing e-commerce movement in the country. And that was something that we definitely felt in the early stages. And then we faced cash flow issues. So people think that once you've raised funding, you're suddenly in the money and driving a Mercedes and whatever else. But we faced real cash flow issues, and we had this money and we had to be wise about how to use it effectively to be able to grow the business's valuation so we could raise again under very different terms. But we also had lots of successes during that time, which kind of counterbalanced these challenges. And there were things like validation, not just from a customer side, but from a Sweepstar side. So we had Sweepstars literally flooding onto the platform in the early months of the business. And that was really good validation that we were offering a service that people were interested in. In our early days when we were living in Joburg and working out of our home, we'd come home in the middle of the day after picking up my daughter from school. And we'd see queues of people waiting outside of our gate, wanting to become Sweepstars and wanting to join the platform. And so that was also a pretty good indicator that there were people who were interested in using the service. And then we also had a really good relationship, both with Sweepstars and with our customers. And so people don't often think about being small as something that you can use to your advantage and you rush to want to grow and to become bigger. But during that time, we really used the fact that we were so tiny to our advantage. We sat down and chatted to every single Sweepstar who was on the platform, asked them what it is that we could be doing better. asked them lots of probably confidential questions about the houses that they were cleaning in and homeowners, and what those houses looked like and how people like their houses to be cleaned. And we also had so few people using the site that we were able to monitor every single person who was making a booking, look at how they were clicking around on the site, what they were doing, what the stumbling blocks were, to the point that we would look at someone going through our booking funnel. If they were having issues, we'd collect their information, give that person a call, say, hey, this is Aisha from Sweepsouth customer support. I noticed that you're having some issues. I'd love to help out. Do you just want to refresh the page? And by the time they refreshed, my co-founder would have fixed the problem, and they'd miraculously just be able to complete the booking. And then also in the early stages, we were allowed to really move according to our vision. And that initial vision around being able to make a big impact on this industry and impact sweep stars and homeowners, we were able to live out that vision very early on without having the influence of a whole lot of shareholders and a whole lot of team members. And that was something that was really valuable because we could build those foundations early on, and they could endure as we built the team. And so we also learned something really important during this stage, and this was something that our investors helped us with a lot. We learned about product market fit and about really, if you want to provide value to your customers, really understanding who it is that those customers are. And so for our sweep stars, we collected a lot of data and found out that these people are working moms. A lot of them are working moms, 97% of our sweep stars. A lot of them are single moms, 67% single moms. Most of them have more than one child. And so we had to design the platform around these attributes. And so as a result, we designed Sweepsouth to be flexible and to have flexible working hours. We designed Sweepsouth that sweep stars could say where they wanted to work and when they wanted to work and what days they were available to work, and people wouldn't be penalized for things like that. We also paid a lot of attention to who our clients were and their attributes, and so we knew things like what city people were booking from on what days. We knew what ages our customers were, if they're in relationships or not, what devices they were using, what channels they were using to access the platform, which ones they preferred, what they loved about using Sweepsouth, what we needed to improve. And we even knew things like who had pets and what sorts of pets that they have. And so I know that a few of our Sweepsouth customers have hedgehogs and snakes at home, for example. And knowing that about our customers really allowed us to get the type of growth that a lot of startups dream of, but it was about really understanding who our customers are. And then we had this amazing opportunity through our investors and through an organization called Startup Grind to work overseas and to work in Silicon Valley, and to kind of move into this next phase of growth. So post-product market fit, to really try and focus on scaling and growing the business. And so Startup Grind had seen us at Simodisa Startup SA, so that conference ended up being the gift that keeps on giving. And they forwarded our names to 500 startups along with our investors and put us forward, and we ended up spending 4 months in Silicon Valley and learning about things like how to market and distribute your startup. We learned things like how to be fearless around your ideas, how to not be ashamed of failure, and how to take risks and to not be afraid of having sometimes wacky ideas. So during our batch of 500 startups, one of the startups that is in that batch and that's done really well is basically what I would describe them as is like a smart shopper for weed. So these people have a reward-based program for buying cannabis, and they're doing really well. And I struggle to see a South African startup coming up with a concept like that. And then we also learned about family and about openness. So 500 Startups really promotes family and being open and sharing information. And we had people who joined 500 Startups and been in previous batches who had businesses that were similar to ours. And whereas I think in South Africa, a situation like that might mean competition and being nervous about what was going to be shared about your business, over there it meant these people went out of their way to introduce themselves to us and invited us to come and sit in their offices to share some of the challenges that we were facing, even though we were potential competitors. And so those are lessons that I think the South African startup scene can probably learn from as well. But there were also some negative lessons that I picked up from Silicon Valley, not just during our time there, but also more recently. So some of you may know that Dave McClure, who's one of the managing partners of 500 Startups, has recently faced very serious allegations of sexual harassment around, and this is part of a bigger expose on sexual harassment in Silicon Valley. And we also learned from this about what not to do as a startup. And I think the South African ecosystem, from the example of Dave and some of the other stories have come out, can learn about how not to behave towards female founders as we kind of grow the ecosystem and become more inclusive. And so it wasn't just about positive lessons, but also what we can avoid. And then we were also lucky through the experience of 500 Startups and also through through the work that we've done to be able to inspire people and to be able to get a lot of kind of media attention around Sweepsouth and what we were doing. But I don't think that this was just by chance. I think this happened because we weren't just a startup that was trying to do cool stuff, and trying to build something that was cool. It was also about a mission and what it is that we were trying to do around empowering women, empowering domestic workers in the country, and trying to include people who've been previously underserved in enjoying the fruits and the benefits of technology and advances in technology in South Africa. So I think very important to have a story that resonates with people, because people take that up with joy, and you end up not having to kind of chase media, but it works out being the other way around. And so post 500 Startups, the business has really been around kind of scaling and growing Sweepsouth and growing into different cities, growing our reach within the cities that we're in. But again, like with the early stages, we faced challenges, and very different challenges to the early stages of the business. So things like communication. When you're a co-founder team of two and you're married to each other, you may argue, but you have communication where you say something and you live with the person you're saying it to, and you understand it, you both understand what's being said, and that's it. We've had to really rethink about how we communicate as a company as we've grown from 2 founders to a team of 25 and having over 3,000 sweep stars. And we have to make sure that everything we say is really understood for what it is. We also face scaling challenges for the first time. So people don't think of scaling as something that's challenging and scary, but for the first time at the end of last year, we scaled to a point where we really weren't able to handle our growth. And so we had angry customers trying to book Sweepsouth in December, desperate for the service, and not being able to get sweep stars. And so as a result, we really had to eat humble pie. Remember that it was about the service that we're providing to people, and I had to make some personal apologies to some Sweepsouth customers, and so we learned a lot through that experience. And then we also faced the kind of the bitter side of PR as well. So as much as Sweepsouth is this business that has gotten really great PR and media attention and inspired people, we also understood that the industry that we're operating in has sensitivities to it. And so people knowing about Sweepsouth, we had people asking questions about, well, what are you paying Sweep Stars? Are you paying Sweep Stars enough? Are they working enough? What happens to someone after they've been on the platform for a couple of years? Are they just domestic workers forever? And so we had to face questions like that, sometimes in a very public forum. And then work-life balance as well. So having the type of growth that I showed on that curve has also come with being on that train and being part of that growth and not necessarily knowing how to get off that train. And so my co-founder and myself have really had to learn how to try and balance work so that it doesn't just become this kind of this route that you're going on where you're not able to stop. And so we've tackled some of those challenges with things like the communication, having a team that really ties into our vision and understands what it is that we're trying to do, doesn't kind of get bent up over misunderstanding things. Having excellent shareholders who understood the scaling challenges that we had and were able to help us kind of guide through that. And so funding's not just about the money. Bringing on good investors isn't just about the money. It's also about bringing on people who are able to provide additional value. And then we had a strong moral compass. So again, going back to that vision and having a vision and a purpose around Sweepsouth. When people ask questions about, what is it that you're doing and what are you doing for your Sweep Stars, you can always take them back to the original vision and the premise for Sweepsouth and how you're being true to that. And so we were able to do that. And then also around work-life balance, we've just recently taken our first holiday in 3 years, so first holiday since starting the business. And so we're slowly also getting over those hurdles as well. And so there's some kind of key lessons that we've learned through our journey with Sweepsouth. that kind of override the past or kind of go over the past 3 years. The first is that the idea is the easy part. So I'm sure when I talked about what Sweepsouth is, there are a few of you who said that you'd had an idea like that or you've heard an idea like that. But really the idea is the easy part, and the execution of it is really the most difficult. Also, having continued focus on providing value. So going back constantly to the value that you provide your customers and making sure that you continue to do that. And then mission being important, so having a purpose in what you do and it not just being about building something that's cool. And then your time being a resource and spending your time prudently. So as much as we value money, time also being really important. Avoidance of failure being impossible. So we were a startup that was growing really, really quickly. And if you looked carefully at our growth curve, you would have seen that there was a little dip recently. And for the first time, we faced a month of negative growth. And that was something that for our whole journey had been looming at us as this thing that would signal the end of Sweepsouth. But it happened to us, and it wasn't the end, and we continued to grow after that. And so avoiding failure is absolutely impossible. But what's important is what you do after that. And then also nothing beats a great team. So getting through all of these things we wouldn't have been able to do without having an amazing founder, but also being able to grow a great team. And so where to now for Sweepsouth? We have some really big goals. We want to obviously grow our reach within the cities that we're currently in. We want to expand geographically into other countries outside of South Africa where people face the same sorts of issues that the local market faces. We also want to look at other types of services. So our vision is really about being a total home services provider. And we have this really cool idea of a sweep star coming into your home. She's cleaning the bathroom, she's cleaning around the tap, and there's a bit of grime that she can't see. So she tries to turn on the light, and when she turns on the light, it glows. And she then orders a light bulb or gets an electrician to come and fix the light, messages you as the customer and says, hey, your bathroom light was broken, but I fixed it, everything's fine. And really making your home experience, one that has a lot less hassle. And then we also want to turn Sweepsouth into a name that people recognize on the continent, and it becomes synonymous with home services. And so we've got really big, kind of lofty goals for the next few years, but we've faced challenges before, and we're up for facing that challenge, and we're really excited to grow the business into something that that South Africans are proud of. So I'm willing to take your questions and happy to take your questions, and thank you very much for listening to our story.